Throughout the 4 seasons of The Boys, Billy Butcher made it his life's mission to take down Vought, Homelander, and Supes. Driven by vengeance for his wife Becca, he killed 14 people along the way. In this video, I'm going to cover every single person Billy Butcher killed. The first time Billy Butcher killed, it was 3 Vought agents, marking the brutal beginning of his war against Supes. While investigating a Vought facility, Butcher and MM stumbled upon a shocking truth. Supes weren't born, they were created. Rows of newborns lay in incubators, each hooked up to an IV filled with Compound V. Butcher put some of the Compound V in a syringe, intending to steal it, and was about to leave when armed guards stormed in, guns drawn.
All right, let's bugger off.
With no weapons and nowhere to run, Butcher made a split-second decision. He pulled a nearby incubator towards the wall where they were hiding behind, leaving the guards confused. He lifted the baby from its incubator and aimed its tiny head at the guards. The infant's heat vision ignited, sending searing blue beams straight through the first 2 agents, slicing them clean in half. Their bodies collapsed to the ground in 2 separate pieces, the sickening scent of burnt flesh filling the room. The third guard hesitated, not wanting to shoot a baby. That proved to be a fatal mistake, as the baby again activated its laser vision and cut off his head. As the silence settled, Butcher laughed at the sheer ridiculousness before setting the baby back down. MM was speechless, still processing what he had just witnessed. It was the first time Butcher had killed in the series, but it certainly wouldn't be the last. The next person on the list was Charles, better known as Mesmer, a washed-up Supe who made the fatal mistake of betraying Billy Butcher. Once a child star with a hit TV show, Mesmer had long since faded into irrelevance, reduced to signing autographs at conventions. Kicked from Vought for misusing his powers for insider trading, his one remaining asset was his telepathic ability, which he offered to the boys in exchange for a chance to meet his daughter again. But he wasn't satisfied, and he saw an opportunity for something greater. Hoping to reclaim his former fame, he double-crossed Butcher and his team by handing over information about them to Homelander. He demanded a job at Vought, but Homelander, of course, left without any promises. Butcher, always one step ahead, had anticipated the betrayal and had planted a tracker on him just in case.
I stuck a little bug on you. Back at that shithole of yours. 'Cause you know.
He tracked Mesmer down to a subway station bathroom, cornering him with nowhere to run. Butcher then beat him up, with each blow revealing his past to Mesmer. Desperate, Mesmer, pleading for his life, offered to use his powers to help Butcher find his missing wife. Butcher grabbed him by the back of the head and slammed his face into the sink, a total of 6 times, until the porcelain was stained red. Mesmer's lifeless body crumpled to the ground. No remorse, no hesitation. Homelander got his information, but Mesmer never got the fame or redemption he so desperately wanted. Just a brutal end at the hands of a man with nothing left to lose. Was anyone secretly happy that Butcher did this? Comment down below, cause Mesmer was so annoying in my opinion. Everyone before this was intentional, Butcher's next kill would be more so of collateral damage. The boys found themselves pursued by the Deep, who was desperate to prove his worth to the Seven. He attempted to stop their escape by summoning sharks to chase them, but the boys were getting closer and closer to land, and in one last move, the Deep summoned a whale, riding on top of it. He maneuvered in front of the beach and stood on top triumphantly, obviously expecting them to stop defeated. But Butcher, as always, had no intention of stopping. Instead of slowing down, he sped up and rammed directly into Lucy's massive body, impaling her in a horrific scene of blood and gore. The boat tore straight through Lucy's flesh, leaving her skewered on the shore. The Deep was thrown back, knocked out. Inside the whale's remains, Huey was actually inside the whale, the overwhelming sight of the entrails surrounding him, leaving him in a state of shock. The Deep's attempt at redemption was nothing short of a joke. His grand mission ended with Lucy's unfortunate death, and his self-worth diminished further than before. Meanwhile, the boys' journey through the sewers continued, but the image of Lucy's mangled body didn't leave their minds. It's just further proof that the Butcher never hesitated to do the unthinkable. Just like Lucy, this next poor Supe just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, especially when Butcher is involved. Hidden behind the walls of Sage Grove, Vought was running disturbing experiments to refine Compound V, injecting adult subjects in hopes of stabilizing their powers. Many of these patients were unstable, unpredictable, and deadly. When the boys infiltrated the facility, all hell broke loose, with Supe inmates breaking free and slaughtering guards and staff alike. Among them was one patient, erratic and volatile, who had escaped the building and landed behind Butcher, Starlight, and Huey. At first, Butcher tried to calm him down and reassure him. The Soup was clearly mentally disturbed, however, and let out a powerful shockwave, leaving Huey, who was in the van, injured as it flipped over several times. Butcher reacted instantly. The patient, still reeling from his unnatural abilities, barely had time to process the situation before Butcher raised his gun and fired. 3 shots to the chest. The Soup staggered before collapsing to the ground, his powers offering no protection against cold hard bullets. Butcher immediately went to check on Huey, who was impaled by shrapnel and fainted shortly afterwards. This time, Butcher does show a little humanity, attempting to be peaceful at first, but when the Soup proved to be dangerous, he wasted no time in eliminating him. While Butcher still had some of his humanity in that last kill, this next one makes it clear that it's fading. Gunpowder, a former sidekick of Soldier Boy and a gun-obsessed Soup who had made a name for himself preaching Second Amendment rights, he had spent years hiding behind his carefully curated public persona, portraying himself as a patriot while burying the trauma of his past with Soldier Boy. Butcher came knocking, asking questions about Soldier Boy, the supposedly fallen team leader. Gunpowder, however, wasn't willing to talk, forcing Butcher to get the answers the hard way. The first encounter between the two ended with Gunpowder getting the better of Butcher, injuring him in the leg and face before Butcher could escape. But when Butcher returned, he wasn't the same mortal man. Now powered up with V24, he was stronger, faster, and more dangerous than ever. Gunpowder's bullets, his greatest weapon, proved useless against Butcher's new invulnerability. The Soup found himself at his enemy's mercy, thoroughly beaten up, and he confessed everything he knew about Soldier Boy's disappearance. Gunpowder begged for mercy, but Butcher was out of control. He pummeled Gunpowder's face to a pulp before unleashing his heat vision, slicing his head in half in a gruesome display. With one kill, Butcher crossed a line he would never walk back from, embracing the very thing that he sought to end. The next group of bodies left in Billy Butcher's wake belonged to 4 Russian guards, who were unfortunate enough to stand between him and his mission. Butcher and the boys had infiltrated a Russian military compound searching for the long-lost Soup, Soldier Boy. In case of any trouble, Butcher had an ace up his sleeve, V24, the temporary compound V that turned him into the very thing he despised. With his new powers coursing through his veins, he became an unstoppable force, and when the alarm rang and the guards came in guns blasting, he was ready. The boys tried guns in the beginning. The first guard barely had a chance to react before Butcher put a bullet in his chest, dropping him instantly. Then Butcher remembered he had powers and confidently walked out into the gunfire, to the complete shock of the rest of the boys.
Evening, cunts!
The next guard was sliced clean in half by a blast of Butcher's heat vision. Another guard was met with the same fate, a searing beam to the chest that left him dead. The last one tried to flee but didn't make it far. Butcher grabbed him, twisted his head, and snapped his neck without a second thought. The carnage was brutal, but Butcher didn't flinch. With every superpowered kill, he drifted further from the man he once was, stepping closer to becoming the monsters that he had sworn to destroy. The 12th person Butcher killed was Splinter, a minor Soup with the ability to extend and weaponize his bones. Splinter had taken down Kimiko and had Frenchie and MM's lives in his hands. That is until Butcher decided to make an entrance. As Firecracker was live streaming, practically gloating that they had won against the boys, Butcher strikes her on the back of the head with a crowbar, taunting Splinter.
You gonna let me smack your girl like that?
Obviously, this ended up just working just as Butcher had planned, and they started having what could be described as a comedic brawl. That was until Butcher got a little too carried away with one of the clones, beating it to a pulp with his crowbar. The other clones took this opportunity and piled on top of Butcher, keeping him on the ground.
Get the boys out of here!
With a little help from the boys, Butcher once again prevails. A devoted follower of Firecracker and an unsettling figure in his own right, Splinter had a unique ability. He could multiply himself into a swarm of identical clones, but for all his bravado, his power had one fatal flaw. His copies were tethered to the original. Kill the Prime, and the rest crumbled. This murder set Butcher further away from the man that he swore to be, pushing him even further down the dark path he was on, and it only gets worse from here. This would be the last time that we see Butcher somewhat human, that is until he slaughters Ezekiel. The confrontation took place inside Firecracker's trailer, where Ezekiel caught Frenchie snooping around.
I'm Firecracker's biggest fan.
Without any hesitation, he attacked, using his stretchable limbs to throw Frenchie around the trailer, before throwing him out the window. Just then, Butcher intervenes, ready to take revenge for what Ezekiel did to his friend.
Oi.
Ezekiel stretches arms out ready for another easy kill, just as Butcher pulls out a fire extinguisher and sprays it with liquid nitrogen, freezing it like an icicle before snapping it off with his trusty crowbar. But then again, Ezekiel is still a soup and begins to throw Butcher around the trailer before strangling him. He sees Becca before blacking out. Something kills Ezekiel. It definitely wasn't Billy Butcher. In a moment of terrifying brutality, Butcher, no longer fully in control of himself, tore Ezekiel apart, leaving only scattered remains. Even he seemed momentarily stunned by what he had done. As the boys processed the carnage, one thing was clear. Billy Butcher was slipping further into the abyss, and there was no telling how far he would go. That is until his next and final kill so far. The last person Butcher killed in season 4 came in one of the most shocking moments in the entire show. Victoria Neuman and Huey were on the verge of making a game-changing deal. They would finally have a soup on their side other than Kimiko, and one of the most powerful soups at that. But Neuman needed this deal just as much, if not more, than Huey and the boys. She needed to protect herself and her daughter, and this was the only way.
Great, so you're gonna help us take down Vought and Homelander.
But before she could even seal the deal, Butcher arrived, colder and more ruthless than ever.
Oi.
Butcher?
No deals.
Unleashing the writhing tendrils sprouting from his body, he wrapped them around her torso, squeezing with terrifying force. Her daughter was ready to take him on confidently, until Butcher put her in her place. He made sure nobody would intervene, not even Starlight or Kimiko. Neuman struggled. He tightened his grip, lifting her off the ground as her ribs cracked under the pressure. Then, with one final pull, he tore her in half, her body splitting in grotesque display of raw power. Her blood-drenched remains hit the floor as Huey stood frozen in horror, realizing that whatever was left of Billy Butcher was long gone. This moment marked Butcher's final descent into brutality, proving that he was willing to do anything to achieve his goal of taking down soups. And I personally was not expecting this at all. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video about every person Homelander killed.